we take a look at Singapore's vaccination rate, it's making massive improvements. It is at where we were targeting, perhaps even faster. Is it fair to assume that its reopening strategy is on track? And if so, what can we expect?
Thank you very much. In fact, our vaccination has made good progress, and it's slightly ahead of schedule. We have planned to achieve 2/3 of vaccination of our whole population by our National Day, 9th of August. In fact, we are slightly ahead. We have achieved 70% by the time we reach our National Day. And we are hoping that we will be able to cover 80% of our population by end of this month or early next month. That will allow us to remain on track on our opening. But our opening strategy is not going to be a big bang strategy that we open and free for all. And the risk of doing that is that the infection rate may climb very rapidly, which will pose a risk to unknown factors, including overwhelming the hospital capacity. So we still need to ensure that our opening process is a carefully calibrated one, taking a more cautious approach and doing so in a step-by-step manner, so that we will continue to open up, at the same time, keep the number of infection generally lower.
What would it take for Singapore to have groups of more than 5 or 8? What would it take for Singapore to perhaps remove the curfew of 10:30 for businesses? What would it take, Minister?
I think it will also require the entire whole world's infection to come under control, because Singapore is an open economy. We still have travelers coming from overseas, including business travelers, as well as Singapore citizens who are traveling overseas and returning to Singapore. And therefore, there continue to be risks of import of new cases, as well as the emergence of new variants. So I think it is important for us to bear in mind that infection will continue until the whole world is safe. And also we have to bear in mind that the vaccines today, although it is very effective against severe diseases, it is somewhat less effective to prevent a transmission. So we will continue to see number of cases in Singapore. In fact, it will continue to grow if we continue to open up. We are prepared for that, but the key is to ensure that we keep the number of severe cases and hospitalization cases low. And this will allow us to progressively open up the economy. In time to come, we will then be able to allow more people to socialize together.
Minister, you talked about how it is important for Singapore to ensure that its healthcare system, its hospitals are not overwhelmed. Is there a threshold? Is there a hospitalization rate that Singapore finds acceptable? Give us a sense of what we are looking out for, when we can expect a clampdown or tighter restrictions. What are the numbers you're looking at?
I think it depends on many factors. It also depends on the severity of the diseases, the cases that we are seeing. And we have sufficient capacity at the moment, but we should not take that for granted, because we have seen it happen in all over the world. When a new wave comes about, you will see cases rise exponentially. And that is what we are trying to avoid. So we will accept that the number of cases will go up as we open up more, but we have to do all we can to avoid an exponential explosion on number of cases, which we have seen in other cases. And if we do have a exponential growth on number of cases, then we will have a problem with our healthcare capacity. But if we are able to maintain the number of cases, allow it, even if it grows, if we are able to slow down the growth rate, then it will allow us to expand our capacity as we go along.
You've talked about opening up Singapore to international travelers who have been vaccinated. Apart from the 4 countries that you've mentioned before, what other countries are you looking at? Would that be the US, UK? Any clarity on that?
We are keeping our options open. We are in discussion with quite a number of countries, but it also depends on the situation both locally in Singapore as well as the epidemic situation in those countries. If they are able to keep the infection under control and the infection rates are acceptable, and then the vaccination rates are high, and those are the countries that we will be prepared to discuss.
Are the US and the UK in that list that's being considered?
Yes, we continue to look at including countries like UK, US, Australia, and so on, to explore possibilities of opening up. We may start with some pilot arrangement where we allow groups of people with a controlled itinerary on a controlled arrangement so as to ensure that they are bubble wrapped to prevent transmission of the disease. And we may do a few of these pilots, particularly for the vaccinated travelers.
Minister, the world is debating booster shots right now. We have Israel already given out about 1 million booster shots, the U.S. considering for those most vulnerable. What's Singapore's position on the booster shot?
Our expert committee is studying this issue together with at the same time collecting scientific data to better understand the effect of a booster shot and the need for it. And in time to come, we may introduce a booster shot, particularly for those who are immunocompromised, where their immunity has declined. And those we may need to provide them with additional booster shot. But the expert committee is studying this very carefully and taking into account the evidence that are emerging from the scientific world.
Minister, in your capacity as a trade minister, are you concerned about the shutdown that we're seeing in China right now? There are concerns that perhaps that could lead to shipping woes, and that may impact Singapore, which is a trade-reliant country. It's just raised its growth projection. Is that at risk?
We are monitoring the situation around the world very carefully because Singapore is, as I said, it's a business hub. We are well connected to the rest of the world through our shipping lanes as well as our digital connectivity. So I think it is important for us to continue to look at the resiliency of our supply chains. So we are also in close touch with our business leaders to better understand their strategy to strengthen their supply line resilience. We are watching this very carefully, but by the moment, it doesn't seem to be affecting our shipping.
What's the biggest risk to Singapore's growth projection right now, given that we're seeing the reemergence and the spread of the Delta variant? We've seen perhaps even a slowdown in China. Its data yesterday fell short of estimates.
We understand that the key concern that we have is really new waves of infection, particularly new variants that may emerge out of COVID-19, which will knock us off our course, not just Singapore, but the rest of the world as well. So we are watching very carefully the emergence of possible new variants around the world, and we are in touch with the scientific community in other parts of the world to continue to keep a close eye on this development. And we must always be prepared to respond very quickly. But from Singapore's point of view, we have very strong fundamentals. Our economy continues to grow strongly, particularly in the export-oriented sectors. So I think we are quite confident that we will be able to achieve our projection this year.
Mr. Gan, Singapore will be welcoming U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris to the city. What priorities or what issues will be key in those discussions with her?
We will discuss a wide spectrum of issues, including our collaboration in many areas, not just economy. We will discuss how we can look at pushing ahead with sustainability issues, how we can collaborate more in terms of research and development in technology, and as well as people-to-people exchange. I think there will be many areas of interest that we will be discussing with Vice President Harris.
Her visit comes hot on the heels of U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to Singapore. Do you think it is a reflection of closer relations between the U.S. and Singapore as well as Southeast Asia?
I think it is a welcome visit because it also reflects a U.S. interest in Singapore as well as in the Asian region. I think this is an important development because we do want to see a stronger engagement from the U.S. in this region in terms of the economic area, as well as other areas, political area, and diplomacy as well. So I think for the regional cooperation, it is very important to continue to have U.S. engagement in this area.